Welcome to For Good Measure, an interview series celebrating diverse composers and other creative artists. I'm Nanette McGuinness, Artistic Executive Director of Ensemble for these times. In this week's episode, we continue our Da Capo Conversations, a mini-series where we'll be giving familiar segments a topical twist. Today we revisit Juhi Bansal's and Sage Shurman's perspectives on who or what inspires them. Here's what Juhi Bansal had to say.
Okay, that's a huge question because I feel like it's kind of like the earlier, there's so many women. I mean, there's just so many inspiring women. I hesitate to start listing names because I know I'll leave out names that are really and truly important to me. I will say this actually, so without specifically naming names, one of the things I find really fascinating about listening to women's stories is that there are stories of strength and courage and fighting for opportunities and making opportunities at like every level, from like, big names that everybody will recognize to your neighbor, to your aunt, to your mom's best friend's cousin. That's one of the things that always has fascinated me. Like, I remember my mom telling not only her own stories of when she was a child and kind of what it meant to be a girl, as far as the opportunities that she was given and the things she had to fight to do. And then thinking about like one of her best friends, and this is a woman I've never met, but I remember hearing about her from my mother about in the 70s in India, this young woman had a child out of wedlock and what that meant in India in the 70s at that time. And, one of the things that I find really, really poignant about that is that it's kind of every woman's experience. Like, I can talk about finding, Malala and Jane Goodall and all these people who I think are just like fascinating role models and huge names that have contributed so much that I find truly inspiring. But I actually think there is something about these kind of smaller human stories about what it means to be a woman that almost speaks to be more, because that is everybody's experience. It's not the same experience, but everybody has their own version of that experience that I think there's a lot of weight to. So for me, I don't know, I think when I think about women's stories, it really is both of that. I have a long list of women who I admire, who are, big names that I think everybody would recognize. But I actually think I find more weight in the stories of average women, or perhaps average is a wrong word, average, or those that, their stories are not told in the same way. They're not celebrities, they're not big names. And kind of things that they have had to overcome just to survive, to work, to live their lives. I've always found those particularly interesting. In terms of my music, of course, I have a number of projects that do take stories of very specific women and try to tell those. But even in a kind of more general sense, I think where I can find a way to use women's words, for example, rather than men's words. Not that there's anything wrong with men's words. Where I have the opportunity to do that, I like to do that just as an homage to not even necessarily a specific woman, but to every woman.
Mm-hmm. Shining light on those who aren't getting light and who haven't gotten light in the past.
Yeah.
Here's what Sage Shurman had to say.
I think someone that had a big influence on me, both, I guess, musically and then also as a mentor, was Andrew Norman. I always really liked his music before the LA Phil Composer Fellowship Program. And then I was applying to that and I was like, no way, he runs the program. That's amazing. And one thing that he told me that really stuck out to me was I was in the habit of making these pieces that were consistently I would say fairly good, but nothing was nothing made them really special or great. And he was just you need to write some bad music, Sage. You need to you're not gonna get something really good until you write things that are actively bad. And it's you have this fear of oh, well, like it needs to hit a certain level of good for it to be able to like be performed. And I think like him telling me that and just like truly accepting like it is okay to be out on a limb and try something totally random, and like in fact like you need to do that if you're gonna, you know, get somewhere new, was very helpful for me. And I try to think about that, like if I'm making too many consistently like, I don't know, 7 out of 10 level pieces, I'm like, all right, like we probably need a 3 out of 10 in here so that we could get a 10 out of 10.
Right.
Not that these things can be graphed so like quantifiably, but
Right. But if your stuff is consistently vanilla, let's just say,
yeah,
acceptable vanilla, you haven't taken enough risks and you've been playing it too safe. So you want to dive bomb a few times to confirm that you're taking those risks.
Yeah.
And in taking those risks, you give yourself the opportunity to take wing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fabulous advice. And did that change your composing style?
Yeah, it just made me branch out more and like try new things without, I guess, the fear of like, well, what if this doesn't work? I feel like that almost, the idea of like, what if this doesn't work almost becomes more of a good thing, because then it's like, oh, yay, that means that I'm doing something that like, you know, at least like I haven't done before, or not enough people on the internet have done before, where I could like look it up and be sure that it's gonna work.
Right, exactly. Because, you know, how can you develop your own unique compositional voice if you're just playing it safe?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you for listening to For Good Measure's Da Capo Conversations, and a special thank you to our guests for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast by clicking on the subscribe button, and support us by sharing it with your friends, posting about it on social media, and leaving us a rating and a review. To learn more about E4TT, our concert season online and in the Bay Area, or to make a tax-deductible donation, please visit us at www.e4tt.org. This podcast is made possible by grants from the California Arts Council, the San Francisco Arts Commission, Grants for the Arts, and generous donors like you. For Good Measure is produced by Nanette McGuinness and Ensemble for These Times, and designed by Brennan Stokes, with special thanks to co-producer and audio engineer Stephanie M. Neumann. Remember to keep supporting equity in the arts, and tune in next week for Good Measure.